Welcome everyone. We'll give everyone just a couple of minutes to join, but in the meantime, Pete, I think you have a trip to New York scheduled next week. What are you most excited for the trip?
Ooh, we do. Yeah, got a bunch of customers that I'm gonna be visiting, so I'm super pumped about that.
Nice.
Should be exciting. Yeah. And this is the nice thing, like so we're approaching like 300 customers for Atrium, and so at this point we have like dozens wherever we go, which is like super fun.
Yes, love that. Super excited. I think we're having like a customer dinner next week. So if you're on this call and you're an
Mhm.
Atrium customer, and in New York, make sure you know about that. But
Mhm.
anyways, I'm super excited to have everyone here today. And for our topic, we're talking sink or swim, manage your sales team through a downturn with Atrium's co-founder and CRO, Pete Kazanji. Like I said, we'll give everyone just a couple of minutes to join. And I'm going to be doing the intro and outro. My name is Hannah White. I'm marketing over at Atrium, and I used to be on MSP as well. So familiar with both
Woohoo!
teams. Awesome. Pete, you want to go ahead and start screen sharing?
Yes, ma'am. Let me
Cool.
make sure I share the right screen here. I always share the wrong screen. Can you see that okay?
I can now. Yep. I think Goldcast takes a
Woohoo!
few minutes to load. Also, love the chat popping off. We've got folks from San Francisco, Boston, Denver, Austin, LA. I will butcher that Canadian city name. and
That's Toronto. No, just kidding.
okay. Thank
No,
you. Mexico, love that. I'm actually going to Mexico City next week.
Mexico.
Super pumped. Um,
Dude,
yeah,
rad.
love
Look
that.
it up. Amazing.
Yes. All right. So let's go ahead and get started. Pete, you want to pan to the next slide? I think
No
we've got
problem.
enough of a quorum, as you say. So before we
Mhm.
begin today's event, everyone is probably aware of this, but today's event is hosted by the team at Modern Sales Pros. For those of you not familiar with Modern Sales Pros, it's the world's largest revenue leadership community for those in sales management, sales and revenue operations, sales development, and the related supporting disciplines. Their mission is to create an environment for their 25,000 and growing members to answer questions they'd otherwise struggle to solve on their own and to help them see around corners they may not know about. MSP does that through great live sessions like what you're about to experience today, and through a robust online forum and in-person events. Those of you who weren't previously admitted should now have access to the community, and if you don't hesitate to drop the team a note via modernsaleshq.com. There's a cute little chat window with Gina's face on the bottom right-hand corner. So on the note of in-person events, quickly sliding into the next slide, upcoming in July 12th through 14th. If you love this content today, you're going to love MSP's 3-day Revenue Excellence Summit happening mid-July. They've pulled together 16 events over 3 days with incredible content and incredible speakers. You're going to hear special fireside chats from individually the CEOs of Zoom Info, SalesLoft, Clary, Winning by Design, and there's going to be panels with like 30 other incredible panelists. So you're going to learn a
Woohoo.
lot. The content's incredible. They just launched the landing page and it's super fun. So you need to go sign up. And special is that there's going to be 3 in-person events paired with this summit. And
Love it.
there's going to be happy hours in New York City, San Francisco, and added this time is Austin. So excited to get those tech community
Ooh,
sales.
Austin.
Yeah. So excited to get those sales, leadership, and management communities together in those cities.
Should be fun.
So yes, it should be super fun. That being said, let's run through some housekeeping before we get started. I know we're all excited to dive into the content, but just a few things first. If you have a question for Pete, please use the Q&A function, which you'll find on the right-hand side of your screen, where it says chat, Q&A, right after it says poll.
Weird. It says chat and Q&A.
I
We're
know,
the chat and Q&A
right?
panelists.
And then also, please use the Q&A or then just regular chat panel. You can pop off there too. We love the engagement and love the interactivity of this. So keep up the energy.
Woohoo.
Pete and I will try to get to all your questions during the event, so don't hesitate to ask away. And then yes, make sure you're listening right now. This event is being recorded. You will get the slides and everything, the recording, the recap, the key takeaways after the event today. So
Wait,
Angelica,
hey, Hannah, is this going to be recorded? Are we going to be able to get the recording after the fact?
yeah, always.
Um,
Awesome. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it off to Pete to introduce Atrium and then himself, and he's going to dive right into the content.
all right, killer. Hey everybody, I'm Pete Kazanji. A little bit about me here in a second. Yeah, this event is sponsored by Atrium. Atrium, in short, we make data-driven sales management software that exists to help sales managers, so AE, SDR, AM, CSM managers use data to improve team performance. And the way that Atrium does that is by out of the box instrumenting dozens and dozens of core KPIs that are everything you could possibly want to know about your SDRs, your AEs, your AMs, CSMs, and then statistically monitoring that to help managers get ahead of issues before they become problems, and generally just help your sales team win. And so one of the really nifty things about Atrium, it takes about 5 minutes to set up. It's very you just sign in with your Salesforce seat, and you're on your merry way within 5 minutes. So very excited to be here talking about sales management in a downturn. I wouldn't say it's a topic that's near and dear to my heart, but it's an important topic. It's kind of important, and it's definitely something that you can use data to kind of help with. A little bit of background on me, as noted earlier, I'm the founder of Atrium. I also lead our sales organization here. Additionally, I started Modern Sales Pros and wrote a book on sales, on startup sales called Founding Sales. Prior to all that, founded a recruiting software company called TalentBin that was acquired by Monster Worldwide in 2014. So after being acquired by Monster, I went from running a 20-person sales organization to doing new product sales for 1,000-person sales organization. So kind of thinking about sales a little bit here. And importantly, I've been through a couple of economic downturns, whether it's the COVID one or the prior one or what have you. So one thing I wanted to share with folks is, at Atrium, we really focus on helping managers be better at what they do. We do that with Atrium through metrics and data-driven sales management software. One of the other things that we do is we do a lot of content and kind of training programs and what have you as well. One of the things that we're doing upcoming is we're sponsoring a sales management bootcamp by Richard Harris. Richard is a fantastic sales enablement practitioner, and so this one is focused purely on sales management and helping AE managers, SDR managers, sales leaders, so VPs of sales, sales development leaders, et cetera, be better managers. If you're interested in signing up there, we're going to drop a link in the chat here. You can also scan that QR code. It should be pretty fun. It's only like 4 hours. Normally something like this would cost $1,000 if you were signing up for it, but we're sponsoring it, so pretty fun. Great. All right, so let's go ahead and get into the content here. We have a lot of stuff to cover. And so what we're going to be talking about is how you change your sales management behavior in like an economic downturn in in a compressed environment like that. And so essentially what we're going to be doing is talking through a couple of different things here. So pivoting, like how to pivot a team, finding new baselines for your sales motion, driving effort and efficiency on those teams, and then delivering management operation efficiency, in their operations function, and then if needed, how to right size your organization. So lots and lots and lots of stuff to go through here to get today. Hopefully, so it's going to be a little bit of a race, but let's go ahead and get started. So I think the first thing here is we're going to talk about a growth first to efficiency first mindset. So one of the things that kind of historically, or at least over the last couple of years, a lot of organizations have thought about growth at all costs. So what that has historically meant is adding lots of account executives, adding a lot of SDRs, not necessarily having them, not necessarily paying as close attention as you maybe could to the efficiency of those folks, what their quota attainment is looking like, where there are areas for improvement, things like that. And that's really changing. And so this new world where you might have more inbound drying up, tighter budgets, things like that. And so all of this stuff is really going to be driving an importance of focusing on higher efficiency and kind of zooming in on those sort of things. And so there's a couple of different things that you need to do there in order to react to that new reality. So first, and we're going to talk through each one, figure out new baselines. So if your sales motion has changed, what are those new baselines going to look like? What does that have? What implications does that have for your organization? Then we got to drive our efficiency. So like, and also effort. We may need to raise our level of effort there and drive more efficiency. What does that look like in management and operations as well? And then if needed, how do you right size your sales team? So let's go ahead and talk about our new baselines here. So what you're going to do in that situation is, like, one, you got to figure out your new baselines for various KPIs that may have changed as a result of the new economic realities. Then, based on those new baselines, you have to set new goals and potentially new quotas based on that. Then you need to enforce those baselines. And then lastly, you have to cascade the above into your plan of record. And so what those might look like, how you might figure out those new baselines, is first, probably what you're going to want to do is evaluate some of your core KPIs that you need to re-benchmark for your team. So for AEs, that might be like the revenue formula. So bookings, new opportunity ownership, win rate, et cetera. For SDRs, that might be that's the kind of core contributors to the pipeline formula. So opportunity creation, the number of accounts people are interacting with, the number of ops they're creating, et cetera. Right. And so then what you're going to have to do is say, cool, what is the appropriate sampling period where that might, where you might be able to suss out what that new market reality might look like. That's kind of going to be contingent on how, the speed of your sales cycle, or the speed of your prospecting cycle there. So it's kind of some examples of what this might look like in practice. This is a screenshot of customer-facing meeting volumes, or first customer meetings for an organization at the point at which the coronavirus pandemic took off. So like, you had a certain baseline, and then bink, you got a new baseline that kind of showed up. Same sort of thing on the SDR side. This is their historical email engagement rate, so like a fancy version of email response rates, and then that dropped down, right, pretty substantially. In the case of the coronavirus pandemic, that actually rebounded in short order after that, which was pretty good. But it's just something that you have to be mindful of. There's like looking at how there might be like a step function there. And so what that'll do is drive those various KPIs, right? The new levels of the various KPIs that drive into like your either the AE revenue formula there, or alternatively the SDR pipeline generation formula there. So first, you're gonna have to like see if you have to rebaseline there. The next thing is like, okay, what does that sampling period look like? And so where that's going to come from, or like how quickly you can resample, is kind of contingent on a number of things. Like, one, if you have a bunch of like a bunch of reps, you'll be able to see that data much more quickly because you have a much larger sample size to kind of look at there. If you have a faster sales motion velocity, you'll also be able to see things more quickly. If you have a slower sales motion velocity, probably take a little bit of longer time for those win rates to deteriorate, or those meeting volumes to deteriorate. Okay. And then moreover, if it's a precursor versus an output metric, if it's a precursor metric, you'll be able to see this very quickly, like meeting volumes or response rates or whatever. It's an output metric like proposal sends or wins or whatever, it'll be a little bit slower there. And so we can kind of just show a little bit of what this looks like in practice here, where you can kind of see this is like that email engagement rate what we looked at previously. So a leading indicator there, pretty quick to change. Opportunity creation. In this organization, this is a very large organization, so a 50 rep SDR organization. And you can see very quickly, you could see the change in the average opportunity creation on a week by week basis, because it was such a large organization. Same thing here with the ratio of activities, like how many activities were required to create an opportunity. You can see that things got less efficient pretty quickly there across that entire organization. And the same was true on the AE side with customer facing meeting volumes. The next thing that you're going to want to like verify there is like, is it actually an average, right? And so what you want, it's important to kind of look on a per rep basis to say, oh, okay, is this a broad degradation across the team, or is it just like one person who's kind of degrading? In this case, you could see that there was a whole set of like pretty much everybody on the team degraded, except for one person right here. So that's like a pretty broad degradation there. So it's probably safe to say that, yeah, okay, that actually is a fair average there. And the same kind of like shows up. You can do the same thing with like opportunity conversion rates, and then win rates, of course, will be a lagging indicator there. So one, how does that, like, how long does it take for that to sort out? That's going to be kind of contingent on like those leading indicators, and also the size of your organization and what have you. So then once you have a sense of what are what the reality is associated with those core metrics, and then moreover, you can do this in general, even if you're not in like an economic downturn or what have you. You can just do this, right? To say, hey, I should actually know what the core physics of my business look like, because that will then inform your operating model and the kind of the rest of your goals. And so what that might mean is that you might have to update your new quota. So for instance, if your win rates have deteriorated, right, then the number of like deals that are going to come out of your opportunity, like the opportunities that your AEs are working, might, that's going to change potential quota attainment there. So that might indicate that there's a need to reset quotas there. The same is true on opportunity creation as well. Once you do that, you then have to republish that information, because if people don't know what their new goals are, it's really important to make sure like it's hard to hold them accountable. Then once you have those actually published, now we want to drive accountability, right? And so we want to use metrics and instrumentation and kind of the operating rhythm of that in order to drive accountability and make sure that people are towing that line. And then that may inform your operating model as well, with respect to the number of AEs that you should be hiring, the number of SDRs you should be hiring, etc. So oftentimes what you'll want to do there is an organization may have what is known as a quota-based sales team operating model that uses rep quota and like number of reps at quota to inform your operating model. If something has changed under that, like if the win rates have fundamentally changed, your prior operating model may be off, right? And so that's really important for you to say, oh, okay, our win rates have dramatically changed. If that is the case, that's not always the case. Our win rates have dramatically changed. That changes our operating model in these ways right here that would indicate this less amount of revenue, which means this less amount of runway, et cetera, right? Cool. So that's all about like taking new baselines, et cetera, refactoring operating models. But rather than just reacting to the world, right, being acted upon, ideally what we're doing is we're acting upon the world. We're reacting, and we're driving better effort and better efficiency in our teams. And so now we're going to talk about a little bit of kind of what that might look like in practice. So sales organizations can react to negative economic shocks by kind of doing two things: driving higher levels of effort and higher levels of efficiency. One might argue that there's probably it would probably be a good thing to have high levels of effort and high levels of efficiency in general, even like during all periods. But the reality is that in times of like economic plenty, certainly organizations can get a little bit like lackadaisical. And so the first thing you need to figure out there is like, what is the correct level of effort? We'll kind of talk about what that might look like in good times. Like that level of effort might be lackadaisically enforced or maybe not even instrumented. This is a good opportunity to be like, hey, here's like the new reality. We're going to like, it's time to kick some ass. The second thing might be, what are the right levels of efficiency? Again, in good times, you might not even have that you might not even have that instrumented. You might not be driving accountability on that. Again, raising those levels of efficiency and holding people accountable to them can be really important. And then once these expectations have been noted and set, now we gotta hold people accountable in that regard. And so these are some examples of really great level of effort and level of excellence / efficiency metrics here. For these are some to kind of like consider for your SDR team or your AE team. These are inputs right here. These are outputs right here. And then these are efficiency metrics right here. Cool. And so let's talk about kind of like new standards of levels of effort here. the metaphor that I kind of use for this is moving from a marathon pace to being like chased by a bear. um, and so what that can mean is, where should level of effort be for your teams? Now is the time for us to instrument and kind of like set those clear expectations. So that can mean AE. So AE level of effort metrics would be things like external meetings, email volume, opportunity touches, how much they're prospecting, etc. And then moreover, and then on the SDR side, that would be things like emails, calls, accounts touched. What you're going to want to do is like look at our top performers and like look at their historical and current levels of effort in order to understand like what is possible for the for the organization here. We have a master class on kind of goal setting and also instrumenting work from home sales teams that maybe we can drop in the chat here. It kind of talks about this a little bit more in detail. But just in short, what you can kind of see here is like, guess what? There's a lot of like variation in level of effort between teams. So this is a screenshot of an organization. Like, these are customer facing meeting volumes for account executives. I don't know, there's like a dozen account executives here. You can kind of see like what's going on here. Like, you have some people who are like way outstripping everybody else. Then you kind of have like this middle group here. And then you have some like pretty substantial laggards here. And so like looking at this, you can say, hey, you know what? This right here is what we should hold everybody accountable to, right? And so this right here is not being reached by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people. Maybe that person doesn't count right there. Five people right there. Okay, that tells me that there's some management to be done here, right? You have people who are off as compared to, and we're not holding everybody accountable for this level of effort right here, but guess what? Like, I see that 40% of my team is right here, and that's literally 30% more output than the rest of the organization. There's something to be done there. You can see the same sort of situation here with respect to account touches. So same level of variation. Again, these are all like same. These people all have the same sales motion. It's not like this is an enterprise rep right here and like this is an SMB rep right here. This is just, all these folks have the same sales motion. And again, what you can kind of see is you got these cluster of like higher performers right here, and then you have these laggards down here, right? Same with like SDR behavior right here. You can see our underperformers here, our mid performers here, and our top performers here right here with respect to email volumes. So it's like this pattern continues. And so what you can do is, if you can raise those mid performers, and we'll talk about like moving out underperformers, but if you can raise those mid performers to a higher performer level, there really represents an opportunity for substantial improvement there. The same is true with respect to efficiency metrics. So like what I call standards of excellence and efficiency, same sort of situation, except these are metrics as relates to quality metrics like win rate, or untouched opportunities, conversion rates. With SDRs, this would be email responsiveness, the number of multi-threading capacity, etc. Same sort of stuff, though. You can use these metrics to instrument what's where those various level of excellence are, and then you can see how we might change everybody's behavior. So I'll give you an example here. This is an untouched opportunity slide, or sorry, metric right here. So this is the number of ops that haven't been touched in 30 days. Obviously, if like inbound is drying up, kind of important to make sure that AEs are actually working those opportunities. And you can see some reps are like totally on top of their ops, right? They only have like 1 or 2 ops in a given month that have been 30 days untouched. Then you have other folks that are kind of in the mid tier here, like, oh, I got like 10 or 15 or 20 opportunities. If you have like 60 ops within your pipe or what have you, then guess what? Like, that could be a pretty meaningful subset of opportunities that are going neglected. And then we have people who are just like totally in the doghouse here, like have 40 opportunities that are untouched, 50 opportunities that are untouched. Like, I'm sure that marketing isn't super stoked about the fact that they work their tail off in order to make sure that that leads and ops are coming in, and then lo and behold, they're not actually being tended to by these account executives right here. So again, changing the expectations in your organization to say, we have an expectation that you have fewer than 5 untouched ops in your pipe at any given point in time, can then change the behavior on the team. Right. Same with things like this is multi-threading right here. The number of contacts that are being touched in an account. You can kind of see there's a couple of reps here who are like barely touching more than one contact per account. Then you have your mid-level here, people who are like at two plus contacts in an op, and then we have our high-performing folks here. Right? Again, like you'll constantly see this, and if we can drive our mid-performing people higher, and then move out our lower performing people, the entire organization is just going to get much more efficient. This is a little bit more of an advanced version of this. This is opportunity conversion rates out of different stages, and what you can see here is like this is on the left index here, this is the percentage of opportunities in that stage that make it to the next stage. So right here, got stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4. So what you can see here is like these reps up here, they get their ops to the next stage very reliably, right? These reps down here, they consistently have a hard time getting those ops to the next stage. And so these are great leading indicators of eventual win rate. So how can we get some of these middle performers into these higher performing conversion rates through better coaching? And then moreover, how can like the kind of direct way of saying this is that these reps right here are wasting opportunities that would probably be better served going to these reps right here. And so in an opportunity constrained environment, it would be better for us to give these opportunities to these reps right here and say goodbye to these reps than it would be for us to continue to throw good money after bad there. You can see the same thing on SDR teams as well. So this is email engagement rate, which is a metric on this is email engagement rate, which is a how well SDRs are eliciting responsiveness from prospects. Again, you can see quite a bit of variation here, where you have some folks who are much better at eliciting responses versus some of these low performers right here. And then you have your middle pack. So how can we take this middle pack, move them up? How can we take this lower pack and say, hey, maybe there's a better role for you somewhere else? Same thing with like, account to op creation ratio, touches per account, et cetera, et cetera. And so what you can do here is, one, you can benchmark this and say, hey, these are the new, like I'm going to say I'm going to set the goal between my mid and top performers. The other thing too is that you can do bottoms up modeling on this from both a level of effort and a level of efficiency standpoint. So how many meetings does it take an op? Does an op take to work? How many, what other work does an AE do besides meetings, et cetera, and then say, hey, there's 40 hours in a week, there's 50 hours in a week. How do I go ahead and bubble that up into what they ought to be doing, and then publish the expectations on this. So the way to, of course, to then do this, once you set these expectations and identify where we ought to be with respect to these various metrics, we would then implement a metrics harness, or a more muscular metrics harness than we had previously had, because this is going to be something that's going to allow us to say, hey, we have these new thresholds of level of effort and level of efficiency. Let's go ahead and implement a metrics harness in order to visualize this and hold people accountable on this front. And so just kind of like briefly on this, like one, there's kind of two steps to this. One, you got to visualize what's going on, and then two, you got to distribute and consume that. We have some presentations on visualization and like how to set up a meaningful metrics harness there, and then secondarily how to implement an operating rhythm to ensure that that information is being broadcast across the organization and consumed in various meetings. The short of this is that on a visualization standpoint, this is something that like data-driven sales management software like Atrium can help you with, but you can implement in other ways as well. The most important thing though is that if you have views or alert feeds or what have you in place, like that, you have to weave it into your operating rhythm in order to make sure that people are actually consuming it. And then different ways you can do this is you can either do it through automated distributions using kind of email broadcasts and dashboard sends, or you can ensure that it's happening in meeting-based consumption as well. Cool. So that's a little bit about level of effort, level of efficiency stuff there. Now but that's like on a rep basis. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna pivot a little bit and talk about sales management and kind of operations efficiency, right? How can we make our sales operations folks, how can we make sales management more efficient in order to like really just, drive those better operational efficiencies. So there's a couple of different ways that we can do that. There's sales management excellence, and there's sales operations excellence. On the sales management side of things, one of the things that we can do, like we talk about this all the time at Atrium. So better managers drive better outcomes in the organization. So a tighter and better sales management motion is a really powerful opportunity for leverage. And so what that can mean is better managerial cadences. So instead of having kind of like, hey, how you doing one-on-ones, it's more focused on like, hey, here are your metrics right here. Here is our development area. Like maybe it might be untouched opportunities, or maybe it might be, opportunity conversion rates out of this stage or this stage. And then or what have you, but then focusing in on that and then saying, all right, cool, we're going to improve this in order to drive better efficiency out of you as a seller. All that comes from better management. The other thing too is better data-driven management of reps can drive this. So if we're doing a better job of, rather than managing by feel or managing by gut or what have you, then we can get ahead of issues before they become problems, and we can be doing a better job of lifting our reps' performance via better coaching and via better management. Another thing too is that if you have both of these things going on, you can have bigger spans of control. So rather than having 6 account executives going into a sales manager, you can have maybe 8, maybe 10. And so what that means is, and have the same level of managerial oversight and like rigor, that can be a very powerful thing. The second thing here is sales operations excellence. And so this is one of the things where sales operations can really shine in a situation right there, because one, sales operations can spend their time deploying more and more automation across the organization, and then moreover doing a great job of looking for inefficiencies and leverage and driving performance there. And so one of the things that like we kind of talk about is all the different like jobs to be done by a sales manager or by sales operations. A lot of these things are kind of like low value, right? Like a good example, like building one-off reports for managers, right? Or doing actual like KPI, comparison or whatever. All of these sort of things, like these can all be like automated. We actually, like Atrium automates lots of these tasks. And so instead, what sales operations can spend their time doing, or sales management can spend their time doing, is these higher level, right, higher value behavior. So in the case of sales management, that would be things like doing a better job around coaching and onboarding your new reps and getting them to success, right? As opposed to trying to, dig through a bunch of metrics and understand like what's going on. If that can just be automated for them, you're better off there. Some kind of other examples here on the sales management side. Yeah, those better managerial cadence can mean if you have a better operating rhythm, so like better stand-ups, better sales team meetings, better one-on-ones versus pipe reviews, etc. That can be a very powerful thing to drive better efficiency in the organization. And then, if you're doing a better job of data-driven sales management, it's going to let you get ahead of problems sooner, and then moreover identifying successful strategies to then syndicate to the rest of the team, make sure everybody is lining up with that. And then lastly, those bigger spans of control. So if a sales manager is spread across 6 reps versus 9, that's like $100,000 in savings a year there. And then on the sales operations side of things, probably what we're going to be looking for is driving automation as much as possible. So like, where can we automate things that are like a pain for managers? Where we can automate things that are a pain for reps, etc. Can we hire fewer? Can we automate commissions with software like Spiff? Can we automate analytics with something like Atrium? Can we automate inbound booking, right? Essentially automate an inbound SDR using something like Chili Piper or Calendly or what have you. And then moreover, can you make sure that SDRs are using their sales engagement software, to the maximum efficiency? And so we actually have a sales operational maturity model that that I think maybe we can drop into the chat here, that can kind of help with identifying some of those like low-hanging fruit opportunities. Cool. So last topic here, right-sizing your sales organization. So in some situations, it may make sense for you to compress your sales organization because, like, for instance, you don't have as many opportunities as you thought you'd be able to. And so like the number of account executives that you have isn't where you need to be. Or the same thing might be the case on the SDR team as well. And so while it's not necessarily be super fun, it is something that you might need to do, and you want to do it in an understanding but also fair way with like data-backed decisions. And so the question then becomes like, okay, well, what is the right size there? And where that can kind of be informed from is what did you discover in that KPI rebasing work? Did we realize that our AEs were operating at 60% capacity? Right, like a good example of that would be our account executives are having 8 meetings a week instead of 12 to 15. Like that's pretty low, like pretty low utilization. Like what are they doing the rest of the time? Or did we realize that we could get like more output from our SDR team by making sure that they were by driving 80th percentile level of effort? And so what that means that like maybe 30% of our SDR team is no longer needed. Like these might be things that you realize based on the analysis. And so what this can do is that can inform the new size of what your sales organization might look like. And so even though, so what you have to remember here is that AEs produce revenue. So what we want to make sure we're not doing is reducing total revenue, but instead driving up efficiency of the AEs who remain. So we get the same revenue or maybe more at a less cost, right? So that's like we don't want to remove quota capacity if all of our AEs are actually fully utilized. That would be a bad thing because now we're literally reducing the amount of revenue that we can drive. Cool. So like once we do that, who should be the people that we would be thinking about offboarding here? So once we've decided on the appropriate size of the team, first what we want to do is like look at the people who are underperformers with respect to output, and then figure out what's driving that underperformance from an output standpoint. And so what that would mean is it a will issue or is it a skill issue? If it's a will issue, well, I mean, that's usually just an indication of somebody who's like checked out and like not really kind of in it to win it. And those are usually kind of tough things to remediate or coach up. Skill or like efficiency issues, usually those are a little bit easier to coach up. And then lastly, what you would want to do is look at understanding, are there reps who have like upcoming pipe, and if folks do have pretty heavy forward-looking pipes, those would probably be people that we would not want to offboard, because guess what? Like transfer pipe really doesn't close very well at all. Versus if you have reps who have kind of like light upcoming pipe, those might be better candidates for that. And so when we're looking for which reps we should potentially go, and we're doing that based on performance KPIs, again, what we want to do is look at underperformance with respect to output. The lowest performers there for the AEs, that would be bookings or like opportunity and meeting creation with respect to SDRs. We want to use a long enough sampling period so like there isn't any sort of noise in there. And then also you don't want to get tripped up by an underperforming AE that had like a, one big deal or what have you. Also, I think it's important to like be mindful of reps in ramp as well. Because oftentimes what can happen is like you can have a rep who's in ramp who has really fantastic looking leading indicators, maybe even like better than some of your existing or like more scaled reps. And so that might be like it would be premature to potentially offboard those sort of folks, because their leading indicators look so good. And this is actually something that we've done for a lot of our customers who are really interested in saying like, hey, you know what, are there places in our organization where we can kind of like tune the efficiency of our AE team, and moreover, like if we are thinking about doing a riff, who are the people that are potentially candidates for that. Cool. So we kind of already covered this will versus skill stuff. So let's go ahead and look at like what this looks like in practice here. Cool. So what you can see here is that this is trailing 6-month sampling period with respect to bookings. And what you can see here is there's a couple of like, potential riff candidates. Like this is a riff candidate, this is a riff candidate, this is a riff candidate, this person's in ramp right here. So then once you kind of like look at that attainment, then you might say like, okay, where is that kind of coming from? Again, same sort of situation, riff candidate, the same sort of folks. In this case, what we were looking for is like, is there somebody who has a high number of bookings who actually has a very low number of wins that might have had like a particularly large deal that just kind of like lucked out there. And so that's why we're looking at wins, here. It's also really important to like look at trends over time. So for instance, like this blue line right here, we can kind of see that this rep is like a continuous low performer. Same kind of like with this this purple person right here. So what you're making sure of is you want to see like consistent low performance versus like if somebody like, was a high performer, then maybe had like a bad quarter and they're back up again, they might be a little bit low if you're looking at a trailing 6-month period or trailing 12-month period, but probably not a great idea. Probably not a great idea to riff that person right there. If somebody's in ramp, you might want to look at those skill and will precursors. Yeah, and you can see someone who's like potentially lagged with respect to their ramp here. Cool, and then the same is true with kind of our wins information here. So again, this purple person is like consistently low. This purple and blue person is consistently low with respect to their wins over time. And then another thing to kind of like look at here is like these will level metrics. What was interesting here is like one of those, these are the same riff candidates that we had previously. So Woolensworth, Little Debbie, and Jerry Jumo here. You can actually see that this person has a pretty high level of customer facing meeting volumes, whereas some of these other folks are a little bit lighter, unsurprisingly. So, this would indicate to me that Mr. Woolensworth here and Jerry are both like pretty obvious riff candidates because they're just not putting the work in. Whereas in this case, Little Debbie, even though her bookings levels seem to be a little bit light there, it seems to not really be a question of like will metrics and kind of like effort, and it seems like there's just like a coaching opportunity there, because like she's putting the calories in there. And then again, we're looking at kind of like any of the kind of clear metrics here. So in this case, this Mr. Woolensworth, consistently low performer with respect to customer facing meetings, kind of been like mailing it in for a hot second. And then this Jerry character here has like, performance has been degrading over time here. So based on what I'm seeing right here, Mr. Woolensworth and Jerry seem like the best candidates for compression here on the sales team, because the outputs aren't there, and then moreover, the inputs aren't really taking care of business anyway. And then the last thing that we would kind of look at here would be this skill metric of win rate to see like, hey, is there any sort of like differentiation there. And again, we can kind of see that these guys actually, their skills are okay. Like they're in line with everybody else. We would love everybody to have win rates here, but they're kind of in band with everybody else. And so in this case, it really just seems like the level of efforts aren't there for Mr. Woolensworth and Jerry. So if I wanted to compress my team and like put the ops onto people who are actually going to work them with a high level of will and a high level of effort, those would probably be the people that I would want to offboard from the organization. And so that's an example right there of like what a what analysis might look like in order to help indicate, if you're going to right size your AE team or right size your SDR team, where would you start there? Cool. And so based on the above, based on the above indications there, it looked like there were some folks there that looked like they could do more work. So like, where was it? Yeah, Principal Measure, and actually, let's go back over here to the meetings here. So Principal Measure, and I forget who the other one. Oh, Candace Flynn here, right? You know, they actually could do more meetings, right? Candace and Principal Measure. And moreover, if you look at their win rate there, it's substantially higher. So if we can give them the at bats that are being poorly worked by, I think it was Mr. Woolensworth and Jerry Jumbo, then like we probably wouldn't lose revenue production from that team, right? Because there are reps who have more capacity in their calendar to work more opportunities, and they will work them at a higher level of excellence from a win rate standpoint. And so that indicates to me that there is an opportunity for compressing this AE team in a way that wouldn't make it such that we lose revenue capacity. So again, kind of like a touchy subject, but important, right? Like if you want to be, and moreover, it's funny, like as a data-driven manager, you should be doing this all the time. Like this is kind of what QBRs are for. Like you should be able to look back across the last quarter, irrespective of whether or not there's like, a recession coming or whatever, and say, hey, what happened last quarter? Do I have people who are like mailing it in and have like low win rates, like, play more Fortnite than they do prospecting? Great. If that's the case, that's actually not fair to the rest of your team. And certainly like that's not why you're paying them to be on your account, like on your account executive team or on your SDR team. And so this is where, like, I forget who the person was who said like never waste a never waste a good crisis. It like these are things that people should be doing anyway in order to drive high levels of excellence and efficiency in their team. And so using this as an opportunity to kind of like get your organization's head right, if you will, with respect to data-driven management, level, like, a crisp level of execution and level of effort that is is maybe head and shoulders above where it has been historically. This is a great opportunity to do that. And like, it's kind of like a New Year's resolutions, if you will. There's a New Year's resolution opportunity here in order to say, hey, we need to, like, now is the time for us to shake off the dust and really kind of get our act together. One way of doing that is with, data-driven sales management. That's literally what we do here at Atrium. And then, of course, it just means like up-leveling your sales management game as well. Cool. So I think that's everything that we wanted to cover today. As noted, if you are an AE manager, an SDR manager, VP of sales, director of SDR, or sales operations person, and you'd like to attend this half-day sales management bootcamp that we're sponsoring, normally it would cost you $1,000 to attend something like this. We're sponsoring it, so it'll be gratis, free for you. Go ahead and sign up for the link for that in the link that we're going to drop into the chat, or go ahead with that QR code.
Yeah, awesome, Pete. I'd love to spend, I know we have about 10
Q&A.
minutes. Yeah, I was going to say, I'd love to spend some time Q&Ing. So let's just dive into some of this. We'll leave this slide up so you can go ahead and keep using that QR code.
Thank you.
But of course, yeah. So first up, Nicola Miller asked, in a medium or lower velocity sales motion, do you consider or differentiate between effectiveness rather than efficiency?
Those kind of seem like synonyms. So a good example, like, I mean, literally all it is just like, how are we doing with respect to our our at bats? So how many ops are we given, or do we prospect ourselves? What's our conversion rate from stage to stage to stage, and then eventually what's our win rate there? Like literally, like it's essentially how well do we do with the things that we are given, as opposed to how many things do we create or are given, right? That, like, it's just there's quantity metrics and there's quality metrics, and so what Nicole is asking about is the quality metrics there.
Awesome. And then this is a atrium specific question, but is there, Sheldon Douglas wants to know, is there a way to see talk time along with rep dials numbers?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
Cool. Awesome. Super simple answer. Love that. Elaine asked, if your top performers have historically been very efficient, how do you compare those metrics to the rest of the team?
Yeah, and I think that, like, my take on that is that if you have high performing, if you have high performing, and by high performing what we mean is like a high amount of like bookings output, with kind of like low level of effort, which I think is what Elaine is talking about. It's like if you have a highly efficient rep, what that might indicate is like they have like, lower or like medium customer facing meeting volumes. Well, like, if they do more work, they're going to close more business. And so characterizing that to them, and then moreover making sure that your compensation plan is lined up such that if they drive more bookings, they will get into accelerators, is really a great way of ensuring that that level of effort is there. And like, that's just management, right? Like, hey, look, you're at a lower number of customer facing meetings or what have you than the rest of the team. I need to hold you accountable to that. Oh, well, but I drive all these bookings. Okay, wonderful. Don't you want to drive more bookings? Like,
Always.
don't you want to, like, cool, like, what, and this is just the coaching conversation, like, hey, what do you want to do? Like, why do you work? What do you want to do in your life? Like, do you want to buy a vacation house? Do you want to retire your student debt? Do you want to do XYZ? Right? Um, these are all like, these would be things to then tie that output of like bookings, or like enlarged bookings output, which would then tie to those inputs. Say, hey, these are the things that you want to do. Like, you want to put aside money for your kids' college, or you want to pay down your student loans, or you want to have save for like a really rad vacation or whatever. You will be able to do that if you have these higher levels of activity here. So that's how I would approach that.
That makes sense. And then Elaine had a couple follow-up points to that. So what if effort is there, but it's not measurable, i.e. there's the research time put in, rapport, etc.?
It's always measurable.
Good answer. Good answer.
Like, I usually, like, anytime somebody says like, oh yeah, I was doing the research, I'm like, I don't know. That sounds like, that sounds like an SDR who's afraid of like calling, right? Or,
That's fair.
and like the basic way of doing that is like, cool, put it on your calendar.
Yeah,
Like,
true.
show me. Whoa, you were researching an account for an hour? Jesus, did you write a paper on that? Like, you know what I mean? Like, this is
Yeah.
so usually when people say like, I was doing research, it's like, oh, okay, cool. Like, what were the
What'd
assets
you
that came
learn?
out of
Yeah.
that? Well, no, like, not, don't tell me what you learned, right?
Oh, fair.
Like, cool.
Where's the
Like,
proof?
yeah, like, where are the assets that came out of it? Show me the write up, right? Oh, did
Yeah,
you put together some slides? What's the asset there? It's like, I'm pretty sure you were golfing, right? Like,
that's
I mean,
fair.
reps are the king of this, right? So it's just like, hey, look, like, what we do, what sales organizations do is they turn salary expense into revenue. And so if you're paying somebody's salary expense, you're paying, like, you're paying for those actions that then drive outputs there. So
Mhm.
measure the actions, measure the actions.
Okay, cool. Love that answer. Elaine had one more question. I don't think this overlaps with the one she put in the chat, but in the Q&A tab, she asked, how do you hold top performers accountable for activity when their strength has historically been efficiency? If they are still exceeding quota, do you hold them to the same standards?
Yeah, I think that's exactly the same question that we
Yeah,
addressed earlier, which
yeah,
is,
yeah.
cool. If they're exceeding quota, great. Let's like if they're above quota, one, I think does that indicate that maybe the quotas should be higher? Two, like
Yeah.
if you like if you can hit quota with like 10 customer facing meetings a week, that would indicate to me that maybe the quota should be like twice as high. Maybe not twice as high, maybe like 30% or like 50% higher because like, right? Or alternatively, if that person's hitting quota but other people are not, and this person just happens to be somehow magic, well, that indicates to me like an opportunity for better better accelerators and things like that, right?
Yeah, definitely. And then I think she just added another point in the chat, Elaine. Good call. That theoretically, basically, if they're doing the same thing as the other reps, they should be producing the same thing. So if they're not, there's something wrong.
Well, no,
right?
well, no. What it might, no, not necessarily. What it might indicate is like if you, like we saw this earlier, if you have somebody who has a higher win rate, then the number of widgets that go into them that then turn into like wins is going to be higher. So there's
Oh, right. Yeah.
two things to happen there. One, how can we get other people to the same win rate level? Like, what is this person doing that we can get other people to do? And that this is just data-driven sales management. And then two, if this person has a high win rate, but the number of widgets that are going into them, like customer facing meetings or whatever, is lower because they can get more of them into wins or whatever. Well, ideally, what we would do is want the same number of widgets going into them as into everybody else. So raise the throughput on their assembly line, but they have to have an incentive to do so. Part of that is management. Like, hey, you need to be at the same level of metrics as everybody else, or else like we're going to take you off of this team. You might say, I don't want to do that with a top bookings performer. God bless you. I agree with you, right? Probably what we would want to do there is say, if you put more widgets into your machine here and keep that win rate where it's at because you're more efficient, you will be able to buy an M5 instead of an M3, right? You will be able to go, like, instead of going to Tijuana, you will be able to go to Tulum on vacation, right? Instead of like, you will be able to pay off your student debt this much faster. Make sense?
Yeah, definitely. And then Courtney, love your commentary. This is why sales is the best. Numbers do not lie. Exactly. Awesome. So with that, I think we've covered everything. We've hit all the Q&A and questions coming in the chat. So thank you, Pete, for an informative session on Sink or Swim, manage your sales reps through a downturn. And thank you everyone so much for attending today's session. To learn more about Atrium, please head over to atriumhq.com. Just a reminder that the recording and key takeaways will be available on the MSP website shortly. And please don't forget to check out their upcoming events like the 3-day Revenue Excellence Summit happening in mid-July. So hope everyone has an awesome day and we'll talk soon.